Okay, YouTube 30-day challenge, day 2. Today, I'm going to do an unbox and review of the Valve Steam controller. The controller itself was actually released last year, November of last year. So packaging-wise, it's just a kind of a plain utilitarian box with a little sleeve on the outside. Controller itself sits right in the middle there, nice and purty. Inside and underneath the controller, you have the... set the box to the side for now. You have the little Wi-Fi dongle guy that you'll plug into your, it's just USB, you'll plug that into your laptop, desktop, what have you. There's also a USB, micro USB cable, and then this little dude, which is basically an extension. What you would do is, in the event that you can't have direct line of sight with the dongle itself, you plug that guy in there and then set that on your desk. And then now you have basically an extension so that your Steam controller will work properly. So the interesting part obviously is the controller itself. It is both very familiar feeling and very alien feeling all at the same time. Has a very standard ABXY button layout, has one analog stick. There's a forward and back, which are like your start and select for any generic video game controller out there. Steam button works just like the Xbox or the PlayStation button. Pressing that while inside of the Steam Big Picture mode will actually bring up the Steam interface so that you can interact with your library or your controller or what have you. Probably the biggest difference between this and any other controller out there are up here. These are actually haptic touchpad, so it's kind of like a combination of your phone and a touchpad on a laptop. So when you move your finger across this, you'll feel like the minute vibrations like you would as you're typing on your phone or something like that. But it feels more or less like a touchpad that's on your laptop. There's also a button behind those, so much like the analog sticks of any modern console, you can push down on, and that's actually another button. At the top, you do have the dual stage triggers here and the shoulder buttons up here. And then the other cool thing is you have some extra buttons here. These are paddle buttons on the inside of the controller itself where you would normally hold on. This whole plate looks like it's all separated. It's kind of hard to capture that in the light. There you go, you can kind of see it. So this whole plate right here is where the batteries are stored. So there's a slide at the bottom, pop the plate off. And then right up under there you can see, shameless plug for Duracell I guess, the batteries. There's one that goes under each side of the gamepad itself. So we'll put the back cover back on. As far as the layout goes, I think the first thing that's probably the most apparent is, unlike any other, I've got an Xbox pad for reference here. You've got the ABXY up in the corner, and then you've got the analog sticks down here, and then over here obviously you have the directional pad and then the analog stick up in the corner. Compare that to the Steam gamepad and you can immediately see that they've basically taken the ABXY type of buttons and the analog stick and basically swapped places with them. So that is a much more radical change than what I thought that it would be. If you've played just about any modern console recently, almost everyone kind of settles for having the ABXY buttons or whatever, the buttons, triangle, circle, square, up here in the upper right hand corner versus down here in the middle. And boy, it's hard to fight the muscle memory on that one right away. Other than that, it takes a little bit to get the feel for the touchpad itself. One of the cool things is when you move your finger across that haptic feedback, it kind of gives you the sensation that you're moving your thumb across some type of a surface. So it does give you at least some type of indication of like where your thumb is and how fast you're moving and stuff like that. So without that, I would say that there's no way that this controller would work. But with that, it really does make it fairly intuitive and does allow you to kind of get the feel for how you're supposed to use that controller pretty quickly. As for the layout, that's really right about it. The big advantage is these touchpads up here. So configuration wise though, that is a horse of a different color. That was probably the single biggest problem that I had in using this controller, is actually getting it to work with any games, including the ones that are kind of Valve natively supported. There's effectively 3 tiers of games. There's the Valve natively supported ones, where Valve has gone through the extra effort of building controller profiles around specific games. For example, Portal 2 works amazingly well once you can get it to work. There's some other ones that are kind of third-party supported, where you might have a developer that also wants to support the Steam controller and has made a recommended profile for the controller to work with their game. And then there's the bottom of the barrel, if you will, which is games that don't support the controller or only support keyboard and mouse. But all hope is not lost, because the real big advance with the controller is the fact that you can emulate just about any other controller layout. So I mean, you can full on emulate keyboard and mouse with the controller, and that's pretty awesome. I was able to play games that you would never ever try and play. Well, Counter-Strike, for example, try and play Counter-Strike without a keyboard and mouse, and it's all but impossible on any other controller. But with this controller, the controls weren't bad. I mean, I was still scrubbed here. I got absolutely manhandled, but the point is, it felt like a definite upgrade from like using a regular USB gamepad. So configuration wise, unless you're into Linux, I've never seen anything that's this complicated to try and configure. Everything is configurable down to what buttons do what. The controller itself actually has a gyroscope, so you can do, like, I don't know, aim down sight with the left trigger and then use the controller to kind of get some smaller movements in there. You can configure how the gyroscope itself works. The trackpad, as you flick your thumb across it, you get the sensation that there's this wheel or ball, like a trackball, the old school like 90s mouse with the ball on it or whatever. But as you flick your thumb across there, you get the sensation of weight and like the mass that this ball underneath, this virtual ball underneath your trackpad actually has. You can feel it slow down, like you flick your thumb across it and it'll start spinning quickly, or tapping. The haptic feedback taps very quickly and then eventually slows down and then stops. So all of that, the haptic feedback, the virtual friction on that trackpad itself, all of that is totally configurable. And that's not even counting the fact that you can rebind those buttons any way you want to. So you could make the A button the X button or something along those lines. Again, when it works for Valve natively supported games, it works amazingly well. Portal 2 is a fantastic experience with this. In something like Portal, where granted, you don't really have enemies that you necessarily have to fight, but precision, you don't have to be super precise, but you have to at least be able to get a portal where you want it to be. Totally doable, even with the trackpad. And it didn't take very long to kind of get into that groove and kind of forget that you're playing on something that isn't a standard Xbox One controller, until you reach for one of those ABXY buttons, and then you're hitting the trackpad again. So that's definitely a detractor. But all in all, I would say for the kind of first go for Valve making their own hardware, it's hard to say that I recommend it, because it's a great first effort, but boy, when you see the flaws, they're pretty massive. Probably the biggest one is having to enable the Steam client beta. You have to opt into the beta to really get the best support for the controller. And since this thing has been out since November of last year, I don't quite understand why, it's almost March at this point of 2016. I don't understand why that hasn't made it into the mainline Steam client at this point, because, I randomly happened to be opted in on the beta and figured out that it worked on one machine and not the other. So if not for that, I don't know if I would have ever figured it out. And I'd have been pretty annoyed that I spent about $50 on a controller that basically doesn't work. So there it is. That's the Steam controller made by Valve. And we'll see you guys later on today, I guess, for yet another video.